Okay, so something huge is happening in the video game world. I mean, the entire ground is shifting under an industry that's worth hundreds of billions of dollars. And the rulebook, the one that created all of today's biggest blockbusters, it's being completely torn up and rewritten. Let's dive in and figure out what's really going on here.
So check out this number. In early 2024, a game called Helldivers 2 sold 12 million copies. Let that sink in. 12 million in just the first 3 months. I mean, that's a mega hit by any standard. But the really shocking part isn't just that massive number.
It said it had basically zero paid advertising. Yeah, you heard that right. This incredible, explosive success. The kind of thing studios spend tens of millions of dollars just to try and create. It happened with almost no traditional marketing. It just spread like wildfire, all fueled by people talking to each other online and on social media.
So, the big question is, how is that even possible? And is this just some random fluke, a one-off thing, or are we looking at the actual future of gaming? Well, that's exactly what we're going to tackle in this explainer. We're going to break down how this happened, and more importantly, what it means for how games are made, sold, and, actually played.
All right, so first things first. To really get why this is such a big deal, we need to look at the system that's being completely turned on its head. For decades, the industry has been all about what we call AAA games, the equivalent of a huge Hollywood blockbuster. And right now, that blockbuster machine is under some serious strain.
Just look at this number, $300 million. That's how much it can cost to make and market a single big-time video game today. It's insane. These are these massive, incredibly high-stakes bets that take years to develop and need these gigantic marketing campaigns just to have a shot at breaking even.
Yeah, this is the world of AAA gaming. It's not just a high-pressure system. It's a system where the budgets have become completely unsustainable. We're seeing deep cracks form because this constant chase for bigger, better, more photorealistic games has pushed the cost to a point where a lot of people inside the industry are saying this just can't last.
And this chart, it shows this really bizarre kind of scary paradox. On one hand, you have the budgets for these huge games just skyrocketing, up by 50%. But at the exact same time, the industry has been hit with massive layoffs. We're talking more than 20% of the entire workforce in just the last year. So costs are going through the roof, but people are losing their jobs left and right. That's a huge red flag that the system is at a breaking point.
Okay, but right into this super high-pressure, kind of broken environment, a whole new wave of games just showed up. And they didn't just succeed. They won by throwing the entire AAA rulebook out the window.
And you can see the difference so clearly right here. On one side, you have the old AAA playbook, massive budgets, total top-down control, huge marketing campaigns. But on the other side, you've got this new wave. They're nimble, they're driven by the community, and they're way more affordable. I mean, games like Helldivers 2 and Palworld launched at almost half the price of a normal blockbuster, and they counted on players, not giant billboards, to get the word out.
And wow, did it work? I mean, the results just speak for themselves. We already talked about Helldivers 2 and its 12 million copies, but then you have Palworld, which just exploded and became the #2 most played game in the entire history of Steam. That's the biggest PC game store in the world. The lesson here was crystal clear. You do not need a $300 million budget to take over the world.
So the question is, how did they pull this off? Like, what's the secret sauce for this new kind of hype? Well, it really boils down to a few key strategies that just completely flipped that old playbook on its head. Okay, first up, these games are built from the ground up to create stories that you actually want to share with your friends. Just think about the whole Space Vietnam meme from Helldivers 2. That wasn't some slick marketing campaign, right? That was a story that the players themselves created, totally organically. Second, they're super smart about blending genres that people already love to create something that feels new. Everyone called Palworld Pokemon with guns, but what really made people stick around was that it perfectly mixed monster collecting with survival crafting. And third, and this is maybe the most important, they had a player-first mindset. We're talking fair prices and monetization that actually builds trust and goodwill instead of making you feel like you're being shaken down for cash.
And this quote from the director of Helldivers 2 just nails it perfectly. A game for everyone is a game for no one. See, instead of trying to please absolutely everybody, which, let's be honest, usually ends up with a pretty bland, boring product, they focused on a really specific vision. And that authenticity, it connected so much more deeply with the people they were actually trying to reach.
Now look, this isn't just about a couple of games that got lucky. It's actually part of a way bigger trend that one industry analyst, Chris Sikowski, calls the Great Conjunction. And what he means by that is that we're basically in a golden age for small, super-fast developers.
So, what exactly is the Great Conjunction? Well, it's the super rare moment in time where the kinds of games that are actually easier and faster to make are also the exact games that players are desperate to play. It's like after years of these super polished, predictable blockbusters, players are just hungry for something raw, something that's just fun. They don't care as much if it's perfectly polished. They just want that immediate hit of fun.
And the impact of this is huge, seriously. We're seeing developers completely pivot away from that old indie idea of, suffering for years on one single passion project. Instead, they're embracing this idea of rapid development, creating games that, might be a little rough around the edges, a little janky, but they are a blast to play from the second you start.
And this story is just the perfect example. There's this developer, Flan, who was completely burned out after spending 5 years working on a complicated tactical RPG. So he took a break, and in just a few months, he whipped up this simple little game called 20 Minutes Till Dawn. And what happened? It became a massive hit. He never even went back to that 5-year project. That is the Great Conjunction in a nutshell.
But, as powerful as this whole indie revolution is, there's an even bigger disruption looming on the horizon. The very idea of who even makes a game is starting to completely fall apart.
Yeah, the next big wave isn't coming from small studios or indie developers. It's coming from millions and millions of players themselves. You look at platforms like Roblox or Fortnite, they've built these incredible tools that let their users create and even sell their own games and experiences. They are literally turning players into paid creators.
And this brings up a really critical question, one posed here in a report from Deloitte. Will endless, low-cost content do to the gaming industry what it did to TV and film? I mean, think about it. We all saw how user-generated video on platforms like YouTube and TikTok completely upended the economics of traditional media. Well, that same exact force is now pointed squarely at the games industry.
The economics here are just staggering. That huge bar on the left, that represents what it costs a big AAA studio to make just one piece of new content. And the tiny little bar on the right? For a platform like Roblox, the cost to get a brand new piece of content from a user is basically zero. So you have to ask, how can that old, super expensive model possibly compete with a literal infinite supply of free entertainment?
So when you put all these pieces together, you've got the stressed-out AAA system, the rise of these viral indie hits, and this explosion of user-generated content. What you're seeing is a landscape that is being completely, fundamentally reshaped. And this really shows the whole shift perfectly. We're moving away from the era of the old guard, that top-down, tightly controlled, expensive system. We're now in the middle of this chaotic, creative explosion of the new wave, which is way more democratic and player-driven. And where we're headed? To a future that's a totally decentralized network, where the line between who plays a game and who creates a game just disappears.
And all of this leaves us with one last, really fascinating question to think about. In a world where technology lets anyone make a game, where there's a nearly infinite supply of things to play, what's the thing that becomes valuable? What's the thing that's actually rare? Is it a perfectly polished experience, or is it community? Is it authenticity? That right there is the billion-dollar question the entire industry is going to have to figure out next.